Jason,
And I'm Jordan.
and this is not part of the plan.
If you had to watch one movie for the rest of your life, it is just always playing in the background.
Either The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Into the Wild. Both intense movies, more intense.
Wow.
Yeah. What about you?
Something like Inception or Interstellar. Something that's like not straightforward, or some like going completely opposite, just some like childhood cartoon like Robin Hood or something. There you go. There's a good intro somewhere in there. We'll see what
Yeah.
what sticks. Yeah. Now I don't know how to start. Actual start.
Well, we were talking about Father's Day. It's coming up.
Yeah. Jason,
First one for me.
your first Father's Day next week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Viv's gonna do something?
Yeah, she probably will. I tried to do something bigger for Mother's Day. Took her out to dinner.
Oh, nice.
Plan that, and then yeah, she asked me what I wanted to do, and I was just like, to be honest, I kind of just want to do my regular things. I like to bike on Saturday mornings, and she's like, pick the thing that we can't do with you, but I think we'll just go to the beach or something, like as a family, and enjoy that. Yeah, I don't need much.
No. The
Just
weather's getting nicer. You can go. Does Malachi like splash around in the lake at all? Yeah.
we try to put his little feet in the ocean, and he
Oh
did
yeah.
not like that.
No, it's
But he
cold.
likes the water, so I think if we found like a warmer, like maybe like tide pools, like somewhere close, like Rathtrevor, just like big long stretches of just like really shallow water, so it gets warm
Mm.
fast. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Nice.
just being in the presence of my wife and Malachi and the
Mhm.
dog. That's enough. I don't need much. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We were thinking about that, and I feel like so far in the podcast we've talked a lot about cancer and quite a bit about my loss with Amy, and we've kind of referred a little bit to your story too, like before your cancer journey, before all of that, without really going in depth about it yet. We have heard little snippets about your own loss when you were really young. So as Father's Day comes around again, like I guess it'd just be an opportunity to ask you a little bit more about what it was like growing up without your dad. Yeah, I feel I'm hesitating on how to ask the questions because I don't really know, specifically what you would want to talk about. But I guess I just want to create that space for you if you want to share more about your dad's passing, what you remember. You can just share the story if you're up to it, and I'd love to listen as you share and ask questions if that's okay. And yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the space to talk about. Um I probably, like, when you were asking like what do what am I going to do for Father's Day? Like, I've done so little for, not this, I've had my stepdad for like since about 19 or 18. So it's not to say I haven't had opportunity to do stuff for my dad, but growing up, there wasn't that opportunity. Like, it was very clear Father's Day rolled around, and what did I do? Didn't have a dad. And there was not, so you hear my hesitation when I talk about like, what do you want to do? It's like, well, it's not even on
Mm.
my radar still for some reason. So maybe that's just like me not wanting to like think about it, because it's definitely like a traumatic thought to think about.
Yeah. A little bit of background with that. Like how old were you when your dad passed away, and kind of what happened there, and yeah.
Yeah, I was 3 years old. He died of a brain aneurysm. So
Yeah.
yeah, I know vaguely kind of what happened. He woke up with like quite a bit of pain, obviously in his head, and eventually it just got too bad. And I'll just shorten it as easy as I can. But by the time the ambulance had gotten there, I think he either passed getting to the hospital or pretty quick. Yeah, it all happened very suddenly. Um, Talking to my mom, I'm sure there was signs that maybe something was amiss with my dad, but in that day and age, it's very much like I don't need to go to the doctor. Like I'm fine, like really hold it together, But he did have like suffer from migraines, I was told, I believe, and like I don't remember that as a kid, to be honest.
Mm,
3, I don't know if you have memories at
yeah.
3, but I just know what my mom told me over the years or people told me. So that's I don't much remember things about him either. It's so hard. Like the biggest thing I struggle with is trying to figure out if I watched a video of him or if that's an actual memory of him.
Mhm.
Like because I my mom had tapes and VHS of him growing up. So I was like, did I watch that or did I actually remember it?
I can picture you had, I think you had a picture of him in your room, like a framed picture. So like I can picture him because he always had his image there too, and yeah, it, you kind of referred to like the Father's Day thing growing up, but did you ever find it like as a kid in school? I feel like we would make crafts for our dads, our moms, right, on Mother's Day, but how did that make you feel, or did you feel like that you didn't belong in that setting because you weren't able to participate in that? Or
Yeah, I definitely like even thinking about that now, like you asking that question, like brings up like a thought I felt growing up. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't have a dad. Like,
yeah,
it just like pushed the thought of like, oh, you don't have a dad.
did teachers still make you do a craft?
I mean,
Do you
I
remember?
think if I'm remembering correctly, it was like, well, you could do it for your uncle or your opa, like I could
Yeah,
do it for other people, like other males that were close, but it's still like, thanks, like that's
yeah.
not, it's kind of like a consolation prize almost like, but when
Mm,
you're young,
mm.
right? Like I just have those sort of weird memories of like probably grade 3 or grade 4 or something like that. So yeah, it just to reinforce that like reminder that you didn't have a dad and everyone else did.
From a social standpoint with friends, did you feel kind of alone or separate? Did you have any friends who had also lost a parent, like at school or anything? Or I can't think of anyone.
No, no. I can't think of anyone that had lost a parent or even had really been separated. Well, I mean, I guess someone I can think of, but most had parents. Um, I think the thing I can remember probably the most like with social dynamics is people complaining about their parents. Like just like I don't know, like people I knew that didn't get along with their dad or like kind of like typical like angsty teenager stuff, like that's
Yeah.
it's a stage you go through, but I could always remember just thinking like, well, you have a dad. Like it's hard not to look back and just like to not focus on like all the things you miss out on. Um, I mean, even to this day, me and my brother Matt still talk about the loss of our dad and how it's still raw. We're I'm 36 and he's 38.
And both of you are fathers now, and probably think about that sort of thing maybe fresh again as a father, and kind of sensing that dynamic probably. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine that could be part of it too, right?
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's hard to put into words like what it's like being a father for the first time. It's a lot of emotion. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's excitement. It's like I was holding him today and just he was standing up and he was near my face and I was just kind of just telling him things like I'll love you forever, I'll be there to help you. I won't know all the answers, like I don't know why I was saying this to him. Like he probably doesn't understand. I was just maybe just saying it more for me, like I see how important it is to be there as a father even more now. because I guess I didn't have a dad, you know? Like
Mm.
I just want to be supportive, raise a, you know, a loving, respectful boy, and yeah, just do the things I don't want to just have that in the forefront of my mind. Like I have to do all these things because I didn't get to do that. Like, you know, in a way, you're kind of just like spinning your own life onto him, you know, like,
It sounds like those are messages that you wanted. Not that your mom didn't give you those messages, you know, but from your father. Like, sorry, it's making me emotional just thinking about that and like just how beautiful that is, Jason, to be telling your 10-month old, 9-month
yeah,
old,
he's 10
whatever, you
months.
know,
Yeah.
10-month old son, like these things, you know, like
Yeah.
it's
It,
beautiful.
I mean, it almost calms me down too, you know, just reminding him, you know, like it's a wonderful experience for sure. It'll have its challenges as he gets older, but
He's
uh,
anything like you, right, Jason? Pretty
yeah, I mean,
smooth sailing.
oh, that was not a great, I believe I have a good heart, but I definitely made some really, really not great choices growing up. And I'm thankful it didn't come back to bite me. But again, like, you know, recently talking to my mom about this, actually, we were getting choked up talking about it, but we were kind of just saying the thing it robbed me of is just like someone there to kind of teach you the basics of life, you know, how to treat people, how to love people, how to be in a relationship, you know, a good relationship, you know, like I just grew up with nothing modeled to me. You know, obviously my
Mm.
mom modeled a lot to me, or else I don't know, I would say I'm a decent person. Like she modeled love and respect and you know, so not to say she didn't do any of that, but like the things that your dad would do, you know, like even just like the basic things, yeah, going through puberty, like it's usually your dad's talking to you about that stuff, right? It's like here I gotta hear it from my mom, like awkward.
Yeah.
But again, you know,
Mhm.
like in a sense it worked out. Like my mom is my best friend. Like I trust her with
Yeah.
everything. She is the person I look up to. She's my hero. Like there's no other way to put it. She is a strong-willed person, a loving person. So in a sense, it's like I got such a strong relationship with my mom out of losing my dad, but still, you know.
I have always admired your relationship with your mom and really like admired your mom too, like just as an individual. Yeah, I loved coming to your place and like your mom was always so kind to us and treated us so well when we came over, was so hospitable and just so obviously loved you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's easy to see that. And yeah, and the way you would talk about it, right? Like you wouldn't always, you know, sometimes there's conflicts as there are
Yeah.
always with parents and kids, right? But there's always this, I don't know, it always felt like there was respect that you had and this just love for your mom. And yeah, makes sense, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, as we were talking to you before, you know, like, you know, the two don't balance each other out always. I think that's we've discussed this theme a lot lately. You know, like, yeah, I have a great relationship with my mom. I love her. She loves me. But yeah, losing my dad was a tough time. Not having a dad was very tough. And she would say the same thing for sure.
Yeah.
So,
It doesn't make up for having lost your dad.
no, it's important to recognize that, yeah, those two don't cancel each other out or the one doesn't make the other one better. You know, it's
Yeah.
not having a dad is sucky. It's not great. It's going to sting for the rest of my life. As my
Yeah.
brother would say, there's all these things he didn't get to see. You know, the
Mm,
men we became,
yeah.
you know, our kids. those are hard things to think about that he will miss and he has missed, so it's important to take those thoughts on and realize that they're crappy, but they exist. So yeah.
Are there parts of you now that you recognize now that you're an adult and you've gone through that childhood without a father? Are there things now that you recognize were shaped by that in who you are now?
I only see the negative things. I feel like, not trying to blame like not having a dad on like all the somewhat negative things I haven't discussed on this podcast and I probably won't, but just not someone to like help me through, I don't know, like understanding, it seems weird, but like how to treat a woman, like I wasn't always great to my mom. I had a horrible mouth. I look back at that as just the most disrespectful teenager ever.
Mhm.
So yeah, like those things stick out tremendously, like, but just relationships too. Yeah, I don't know. When I reflect on like, the past relationships I had with women, it was clear that had a pretty big effect on me, losing a parent. And just like, yeah. So in a way, I think it did play into like how I manage relationships, with women or with friends and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, not having that modeled to you. We look at our mom and dad as this example of a relationship together, and we do learn a lot from it. Sometimes it's positive messages, sometimes it's negative messages, but like we do learn a lot. And so yeah, it would make sense that like not having that modeled to you because of what happened would affect your own understanding of how to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, and I think the key thing in that was like a healthy relationship, like even like being a boy, like I don't know, there's a lot of hormones going through you at a certain age and you're feeling things you don't quite understand too, right? So like
Yeah.
it's so rough to think back to like when I was lower, when I was earlier, like probably 7 to 10, because there was a
Mm,
lot of things I was feeling. There was other trauma in my life too that was eating away at me, that I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone, that came
yeah.
with other emotions, where it was just like, you want to talk to your dad, like
Mm,
you said, the father figure, but instead, I don't know, I end up finding like solace in talking to my sister, which feels so kind of weird. And like looking back, like I was really close with my sister probably up until like 15, 16. Still closer than now, but it's just so tough to look back at that and be like, there was a lot going on in my head and I turned to other things.
mm.
And that's just, I don't know. It's not like a proud feeling. It's like a hard feeling to look back on. I won't go into those details what I sunk my thoughts or things into, but just all things I'm not proud of now, which are hard not
Mm.
to they're hard to look back on. So I wish I had some guidance.
Is it hard to look back without going to the specifics, but is it hard to look back on because you feel guilty that you did or thought about certain things? I guess what I'm asking is like, do you blame yourself for the things that you now look back on with a bit of regret?
Yeah, yeah. In some ways, yes. They're hard not to forgive myself for. When in all reality, it's hard not to go into detail, specific things, which may be in a future podcast, but I don't know. Yeah. In a way, it's
Yeah.
like I was blaming myself.
Just from like the outside perspective,
Mhm.
I just like it's probably a lot easier for me just, looking outside and be like, well, Jason, like you went through this awful trauma of losing a father and all these other things. Like give that preteen or teenager a break, like
Yeah.
you live the experience, and really only those things. So I just would be like, yeah, give yourself grace, knowing that, like, I don't know, the way that your life started and your family's life, and that was rough. It's so hard, and that's not fair, and it's not right, and all these things. So yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that. It's when you just believe something for long enough, like it just becomes your reality. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm fairly hard on myself. When you look back on something and you're not proud of it, it's hard to look back on. It's painful. Whether there's circumstances that kind of helped me, whether it was stealing or drugs or any of those things, that doesn't matter to me. They were still choices I made. And yeah, I mean, as Viv would say, like and you just said, you got to give yourself, you have to give yourself a break. Like being hard on yourself it doesn't help you, I don't know, figure out your trauma in any way. It almost just like makes it worse. You're just, because right now I'm just feeling a lot of emotion, right? Like, so like
Yeah.
I said in previous, you're adding emotion onto that. You're just doubling down. So I know I need to give myself a bit of break on it, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That must be some sort of like a traumatic response to be like, not that I blame myself for not having a dad, but like I know in other traumas, it's easy to blame yourself, which is so weird. Like, when you're looking in, like from your perspective, it's probably like, what? Why? Why would you think
Yeah.
that? But it's like,
Hmm.
it must be something to do with the brain.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a little bit, and the fact that I am currently trying to respond to a traumatic event. And there is, a sentiment of you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And I'm like, okay, but what? Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't make me feel good, because then if I don't respond well, it's,
Your decision.
hey, you could have chosen to respond better. You could have been handling this better, right? Like, I don't think that's true. Like, okay, I can try to make these good choices for myself. I can try to be healthy and control what I can control and all these things, but the depth of emotion and grief and trauma absolutely prevents you from making good choices. Like, I have lived that this past year, and I think honestly I'm doing the best I can, but I know I've made, I don't know, unhealthy choices as well. And because of the age I am, and because I can hear Amy telling me to give myself grace, I don't feel guilty when I make those bad choices, honestly. And maybe someone else is going to hear that and say, well, how will you ever start making good choices if you're allowing yourself to feel okay making the bad choices? But like, okay, until you walk that mile in my shoes, you cannot tell me how you would respond. Like, you just can't. And maybe you would do better than me. I don't know. But I just don't believe the fact that we can control everything in the middle of the trauma in terms of how we make the choices out of it. And so that's what, and especially as like a young person,
Mhm.
especially as this juvenile who's like the brain development and, like you said, the hormones, like all of this stuff, like, yeah, absolutely you deserve grace. Absolutely you deserve a break for those. And no, that doesn't mean you can be happy or proud about choices you made, but I don't know. I think like, yeah, there doesn't have to be a sense of guilt or even shame. Like, it's easy to say, like, obviously you
Mm,
feel what you feel about it, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully that's not something that you'll hold forever, you know?
I appreciate that point. I think the more that you discuss it openly, you know, I think it's easier to come to terms with. And to come to terms with doesn't mean, yeah, like you said, you're it just disappears, like all the frustration or hurt or anger or any of that. But it's just one step in many to, I don't know, to just like you said, to maybe to give yourself grace. Like maybe that's what I'm working towards, right? Like it's just yeah, to give myself grace for some of the things I'm not proud of. So yeah. But I do agree. I think that there's no right way to work through a trauma, like
Yeah.
we've said it lots, like there's so much like extra grace needed, you know. And I think the people that love you when you are going through it, like I don't know, recently when I was telling my wife that was some really hard stuff that I've never told anyone else in my entire life, and she was just so, oh man, she was just loving, like she just put her arms around me and just showed her love, like that's just, I've never experienced that before. I've never experienced that type of acceptance. Right. When I say that, I automatically I'm like, I'm sorry that you don't have your spouse here to support you. But
That response from Viv is like, it's like sometimes it feels easier to give that response to people while they're experiencing the trauma. And then later on, maybe it's like, well, shouldn't you like kind of be ready to, there's some distance between it. So let's now start to analyze how you responded to that trauma and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, trauma doesn't go away just like that. And that response that you got from Viv when you told her about this trauma from a long time ago, like, yeah, like you might need that type of response for the rest of your life. And to have Viv there to give that, like, that's beautiful. That's awesome. And I guess I say that, and I appreciate you saying, what you did about Amy not being here, but also, like, I do hold on to as best as I can. I hold on to the way that Amy did love me, and that does sustain me at times. And that that I know she would not judge me or think, hey, you should be doing better by now. Like, no, she would be in the mud with me, right? And so that keeps me going. And then yeah, for other people that do reach out and that do come alongside me, and like I'm just trying to accept that love, and I'm gonna need that for the rest of my life, I think, honestly. And that trauma isn't gonna go away. And so the way that we respond to people in the trauma can be the way that we respond to it after the trauma too, for the rest of their lives, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I do agree. It's good to recognize that, accepting that there isn't just like an end date. It's hard though.
It's super hard.
I think you put so much pressure on yourself too to just. I always think like I should be further along. It's like, well,
Mhm.
it could take a long time, but you just take it one step at a time, get through one. Yeah. So
Well, Jason, thanks for yeah, just being open to share about your story and with your dad too. And as Father's Day rolls around next week, yeah, I'm sure you're holding both things of the ongoing just loss that you felt for many, many years, but also the joy of being a father for Father's Day the first time. And I just hope it's a special day for you and your family. Yeah, thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, no problem. And for anyone who's listening who has lost a parent, a spouse, anyone, we see you, we love you, and yeah, just keep taking one more step. All right, it's been Not Part of the Plan.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much.